And we're back, Survivor Global. Another two episodes today, episodes 16 and 17. And I've got my second person back with me for a second time. So, Jake, you're the second one that I'm talking to for a second time, Riley being the other person. Really happy to see you back. How have you been, my friend?
I've been great. I'm very excited to be back on the show. I had a great time last time. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, really excited to have you back on the show as well. I really feel like when we're doing these shows, the aim of doing Survivor Global is to expand the audience that watches it. I wish it was as easy as actually, having Survivor Australia or Australian Survivor on Netflix or something over in the States where more people can see it. Because I do feel like if it was more easy to get your hands on some of these episodes, there would be a lot of people over in the States and other countries that would love to watch these kind of Survivor seasons, especially now that it's the down, sort of in the down season, I would say, or the downtime of Survivor and not having any other Survivor on TV.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to be watching this, but it's just a lot of people don't even know it exists. And even if they do, they're just like, oh, I don't know how to access it, so I'm not even going to try. So, but yeah, I hope that what we're doing is bringing more people into it.
Yeah, I'm hoping it does as well. And definitely, if you're resourceful and you go and look out for it, you definitely can find ways. I mean, both myself and Jake, we're watching it right now on the replays. One of the great things that I've seen is that Australian Survivor now also has Survivor South Africa on Channel 10 that you can watch through their digital platform. So there's always hope that on the digital platform, like CBS has got over there with Paramount Plus, that maybe in the future there will be other avenues that people can watch Survivor South Africa or Australian Survivor as well and fall in love with some of these characters that we've fallen in love with over the first 5 seasons or so of Australian Survivor. Now, coming into this episode, we have just gotten rid of Sean, who's been the big threat up until this point. He's been the challenge beast. And in Australian Survivor, if you're a challenge beast, you don't always necessarily become a target, similar to over in the US until merge time. And then at merge time, if you're not in the numbers, you're out. So Sean's been voted out. David feels like he's on an all-time high because he's taken out his biggest nemesis. And the whole relationship between David and Sean up until this point really reminded me of Stephen Fishback and Joey Amazing when they were playing together. And you know how Stephen Fishback was just always targeting like Joey Amazing. He just wanted to get rid of him. But it's kind of, and in this case, I guess it's Sean being Joey Amazing and David being Fishback, even though making that comparison is hard to make because of how physically different they are. But, imagine if Stephen actually did get Joey out. It's kind of where David's sitting right now. He's finally gotten his Joey Amazing out of the game.
Yeah, David, Sean has been causing Dave a lot of troubles recently with ever since they voted to bring him over to the swap tribe. And luckily he had Nidal to save himself, and but now he finally got rid of him, and I don't know. He's really confident. He's really, really confident right now. That's for sure.
He's feeling himself. He's feeling himself. He thinks that he's got the keys to the win. And I feel like in his case, in his mind, he's thinking, I'm running this Champions Alliance, this All Champions Alliance. I'm the person who's the leader. I'm the person who's going to them and telling them where to vote. And we see throughout this episode, especially in these early stages, he goes to these Champions girls and he tells them, okay, next vote has got to be Daisy, or next vote has got to be this person. And he doesn't ask for anybody's input, which is seen as a massive flaw throughout this game, right? He just wants to tell people what to do.
Pretty much, yeah. Just doesn't really. He says like, yeah, let me float an idea by you, and he says it. He's like, okay, that's what we're gonna do, and he's really underestimating all that time that those three girls spent away from him on the other swap tribe. If I were him, I would be like, crap, I've been away from them like for a really long time, and they probably bonded a lot and they stuck together over there. So I would be worried, but he is not. He's not at all. He's very confident that he is running that alliance.
Yeah, and I wonder if it comes down to the fact that, he's thinking to himself, I was on a tribe with like three other or four other contenders. I can't remember the exact number now coming into the merge. So I had options on the contenders side. But when it comes to my All Alliance, who do they really have? They've only got Harry. And Harry is someone that, seems to be a bit of a snake. He seems to be someone that they didn't necessarily get along with. There was tension there. So I think in his mind, logically, he's thinking there's no reason for them to turn their back on me right now because they just don't have the options that I have. So we actually get a little bit of an insight. I can't remember if it was pre the reward or pre immunity or wherever he said it, but he does go on to say that he's happy to stick with the Champions tribe for now, but ultimately he is going to turn on them. Like he actually gives us a little bit of insight on that here. So Janine and Pia being very aware of David and the threat of David is a good thing, and we do start seeing Pia slowly but surely. She's starting to come out from behind the shadow of Janine, and she's starting to get a little bit more airtime. She's talking about the fact that, Survivor is a three-part game. You've got social strength, you've got physical strength, you've got, what was the other, strategic strength, and she reckons that she's the social mastermind. And we've spoken about how she fits into that three-person alliance and how well they are rounded, basically, with her being that social person. But she's also seen here as wanting to take more of a dominant step towards strategizing and saying to the girls after David walks away, telling them who to vote for, that it's now time to take out David. The time is now.
Yep. As for what Pia said, there's three parts to it. Personally, I believe that social and strategic are one and the same. You can't have one without the other. You can't really make moves that are going to benefit your game that much without having social capital. And that's exactly what Pia is doing. She's using her social skills and bonds to make a strategic move and take out Dave. And yeah, she's really coming out of Janine's shadow. Before this, it was Harry saying that she's the godmother, but now even Janine is giving her a lot of praise, saying that like she's a smiling assassin. And yeah, this is all Pia right here making this move.
Yeah, and we see a lot about her talking about her skills as an actress, how that comes into play in the game of Survivor, because as an actress, you need to learn human behavior so that you can mimic it when you're performing. So, she's using her laughter and having fun and jokes and things like that with Dave as a way to just really calm him down and to make Dave believe that she is still in good with him at this stage of the game. And Dave is not seen as being any wiser to it. Like he seems to be falling for her strategy at this stage.
No, of course not. He's like, everyone loves me. Why would she be acting? It's really convincing. I got to be honest. When she was in her confessional, being like, "Yeah, I can like fake laugh really well," I was like, "Okay, sure." But then she did it, and I was like, "Whoa, that was like perfect." I totally would have fallen for it. But in my head, I'm sure she's like laughing at like, I'm about to blindside you to Dave.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we do see that the challenge in this episode, because it was a shorter episode, this one, we don't go into a reward challenge. We go straight into an individual immunity challenge. So it's the length of this episode is a lot closer to what we would normally see over in the States for an episode, which I felt like actually in this episode was good. The pace of it was pretty good. We moved through it. I know sometimes we really love the longer episodes because we can see a lot more of the strategizing, but it seemed to work really well for this episode. How did you feel about sort of the length and the pacing throughout this episode?
I did notice that the first episode, 16 was it, was yeah, it did feel better paced than 17. I did check the time a few times, being like, oh wow, how long has this been going? And it is the reward challenge that adds a lot. They do tend to show both challenges. In US Survivor, sometimes they cut out reward challenges. And not only do they show challenges, but I feel like they make them a lot longer. In US Survivor, they'll just like kind of cut around. Like sometimes they'll have like 5 rounds of something of like a challenge, but they'll only show like 3. So
Mm.
I do feel like the challenges are what add a lot. And I do like that they show that the longer episodes do allow to show more strategizing, as sometimes in American Survivor, you are left very confused after the episode.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really understand that.
Yeah, I feel like if you could find like the perfect middle between what Australian Survivor is doing and what the US Survivor is doing, where you could cut down a little bit on tribal, because sometimes I do feel like in some of these tribals, unless something really interesting is happening, there's just a lot of repeat talk happening about the same thing over and over again. Same in the challenges. Sometimes in the challenges you see dead time in the challenges that you don't necessarily need to see because it doesn't really matter that much in the
Hmm.
greater scheme of things. But when you look at, for instance, the US, they do a better job at the challenges. They do a better job at the tribal, I feel like. But where the US falls short and where Australian Survivor does better is the strategizing. I feel like you see more of it. There's more transparency in regards to who's turning on who when, so that when you get to tribal, it's like it's almost the closest I can relate it to is Big Brother. I don't know if you watch Big Brother over in the US, but when you see Big Brother, you actually see the plan throughout the week coming to fruition at the end of the week with the person getting voted out. You're not normally blindsided. There's a few times where things last minute will change on you and you didn't realize it changed overnight since the previous episode. But in general, you understand why that person left and what the strategy was or how people got to that point, where in US Survivor, you kind of missed that.
Yes, for sure. I've seen Big Brother. I agree that Australian Survivor can be very similar in that way. And comparing it to the last season of US Winners at War, there were a few episodes where they mentioned the name that ends up going home, like just offhand, like once. Like when Ethan went home. I remember rewatching that episode being like, they mentioned it one time. Like Michelle just was like, or we could do Ethan, and then it like cuts away. And it's like
Yeah.
that's
How did
what
they
they
get
ended
there?
up. It's like, what? We don't even know why. Like, why did they choose? And spoiler alert, in episode 17, they kind of do that, but it's more
Mhm.
understandable because it's like just they're kind of just similar options. But I agree. The longer episodes definitely make for less confusing uh, boots, where we like actually understand how it came to that point.
Yeah, 100%. Now, going into the individual immunity challenge here, we have a challenge where they've got to dig in the sand, a sand pit for balls. They then have to put it on something that looks like a paddle, and they've got to
Hmm.
balance the ball on the paddle to go into those little holes. And it doesn't look like those paddles were very big, like there wasn't much room for movement or anything
No.
like that. So, definitely a bit of a circus trick, a little bit of a skill challenge here that comes into play, which I've never tested myself on something like that. I don't know how I would do. I think in general I'm pretty good at balancing, and I'm good with like just general sports sense. So I would back myself to do okay. But it's interesting here because you do see that Baden just blitzes through it. The rest of them kind of struggle to get there, and Luke then ends up coming on there. And I wonder if it is Luke just winning this challenge based on the fact that he's been in these scenarios before. He's more of an experienced campaigner when it comes to being under pressure or things like that. But Luke ends up blowing Baden out of the water from behind. That's kind of the big part of the challenge. I don't know if there was anything specific that stood out for you on the challenge.
No, challenge didn't really stand out to me too much. I did. I The whole time I was thinking like, yeah, I would suck at this. Anything with balancing balls, which unfortunately the American version does a lot, it seems. I feel like I would be horrible. I would be better at like swimming, maybe, but yeah,
Yeah,
no. I honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the challenges in either version. I probably prefer Australia's more physical ones when it's the team, when it's like multiple tribes. But in general, the challenges usually don't stand out to me too much.
I definitely, if I had to play Survivor, like I would love to play the US Survivor just because I've been a fan since season one. But if I had to choose which one of the two Survivors would I probably do better in, it would be the Australian Survivor, because I would do way better in the physical challenges than what I would do in some of the puzzly type of things that you get over in the US. And it's something that I definitely noticed in these two episodes. Again, there's a lot of focus on physical challenges. You don't see puzzles coming into play, even at this point, where with the US, you would have seen a lot more puzzles come into play to be the equalizer between those that are physical than those that aren't physical, I guess. Sort of moving on to the pre-tribal phase of this episode. So, Luke's now got the immunity necklace. He's very happy about that because he knows that in the previous vote, his ass was on the chopping block. He could have gone home. So it gives him a little bit of a sense of security. David reckons the plan's super simple. He continues to be extremely confident throughout this episode that he's got the votes on lock and he knows what to do. He goes to all of the champions. They all walk away, the 5 of them, leaving the 4 other contenders just there to fend for themselves. And he says that, what we're going to do is we're going to put the votes on Daisy. We're just going to pile it on Daisy. And Pia says that David didn't win the immunity challenge in her confessional, and now is the time to make the move here on David, who's not seeing it coming. And she's very aware that to make this move on David, they've got to work in silence and they've got to be sneaky about it, because if David gets any sense that they're going to move on him, he's going to play an idol if he's got it. So they don't know if he's got it, but they assume that he may have it. And I think being safe when it comes to a player like David is smarter, because he's seen as a player that can play from the bottom. He's done it now twice in the game up until this point, and he's proven that he can find idols. So good play overall here by Pia and Janine and Abby. And they go and have a conversation with various contenders to say that there's a big threat in the game. We now need to go and make this move. This is our only opportunity in the game. But it leaves a massive possibility open here that someone's going to spill the beans, right? Because pretty much everyone in the game knows except for Luke at this stage.
Yes, that Pia, I believe, says it, that, the bad thing about having everyone in on blind side is that it's much more likely that someone's going to spill the beans. And you kind of see this sentiment happen in Cambodia with, except it's more not that someone's going to spill the beans, but that someone's going to try to pull some plurality with the Kelly Wentworth vote when they pile all 9 votes on her instead of splitting it. And there was, the whole reason is that they were terrified that someone was gonna, all you need is 2 people to flip their vote, and then it's a 5 to 4 to whatever. And so, yeah, this is risky, but it's good and bad, because spill the beans, or you can use this vote to bring in more people into your group.
Now, I remember the first time watching this and watching it again now, and I thought to myself, such a risky move. Obviously, we don't live on the beach there with the contenders and the champions there to know what the interconnected personalities are and the friendships that they've had and all those kind of things. But they surely have a lot of trust and faith here that Luke will be okay with the fact that Luke's not being included in this vote. It's the right move not to tell Luke, because if they do tell Luke, I do think that he would have gone to David. David was his boy in this game, and he wouldn't have wanted to see him go. But it's a massive risk in the sense that should he not be included in this vote, what's the incentive that's going to keep him strong with the champions moving forward? I feel like this is a big risk. What did you think about the timing of pulling this move so early in the game?
Yeah, they're making a big play here with because they talk about, Luke hasn't done anything wrong. He just happens to be with David. And it's a very tricky spot because, you've seen one vote can make someone turn on you when you were the best of alliance members right before. So this is very risky that they're just assuming that Luke is going to come strolling right on back. But I mean, I guess that's what happens. So.
Yeah. Now, there is this great scene while they're all in camp, just prior to going out for the actual tribal council. Daisy says to Luke, hey, come have a walk with me. And they walk off and everybody in camp starts freaking out. And it's a little bit of a misdirect by the episode, but I feel like the episodes in Australian Survivor, they do this so well, where they create tension and drama out of potentially something that's not even that big of a deal by the perfect music, by showing that scenario and nothing happens because we don't actually see the conversation of what Daisy said to Luke, and they keep that out because I think it was pretty straightforward probably, and you see Luke coming out and giving the old wink to David saying everything's okay. But I thought it's just a really good way of how Australian Survivor structures the episodes. They create tension with the type of music that they're using. They're very strategic about what type of thing they show at different times. One of the other things I noticed in this episode, and I've seen it a couple of times throughout Australian Survivor, is that you do see people having their confessionals sitting in like 2 or 3 different clothing while they're actually having it. So you can see they're chopping together a lot of confessionals to make people sound smarter or putting it together so it sounds better. I don't think we see it as often over in the States, or maybe I just haven't seen a season in a while, but it's something that I've definitely noticed watching these episodes this season.
Yes, it's much more noticeable. I think it's because of the accents. I think because there's like something with the inflections on words with the Australian accent that makes it much more noticeable, but they don't even try to hide it with like showing the actual shot of them sitting down. Like they're literally showing that they're splicing it together, which is pretty funny. As for the music that you mentioned, that's another thing that it does make it feel the episodes feel more epic sometimes, but sometimes I feel it's pretty funny, like when they're not trying to be. Like when it was Nick talking to Janine and Abby about the toothpick and talking about Nick Wilson. I thought it was really funny when they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember him. How did he do?" And he was like, "He won." And it's like, and I'm like, what is the point of that? Like that was like, that's not even that dramatic. But
it's just like a burn. It's like burn. I knew better than you. It's kind of why they put that there. I thought it was brilliantly done.
I thought it was funny. But yeah, the US tends to be more like less dramatic. Australia definitely excels in creating tension out of not very tense moments.
Yeah, well, dramatic in that sense. In the US, you've got Sari needing to complete the challenge, and that becomes very dramatic, and game changers. It's got its moments. Let's be fair.
But you're right. You're right.
It's got its moments, but I just feel like they put it together really well in this episode. Now we do go to Tribal Council, and one of the first things that Jonathan asks Luke, who's the new person that's won the individual immunity idol, is, are you now the biggest challenge beast in the competition? And Luke does something here that makes me love Luke, and that's why I always think that Luke is such a great player. He makes it into a joke, and he says, yeah, I am the challenge beast right now. You guys all better recognize and watch out, but he does it in a joking way, which immediately it diminishes the target that he's got on his back, and it makes people laugh, and just he does it better than anyone else. And it makes me understand why Luke has gotten so far in this game when he shouldn't have. There's no reason that he should have made it to this point in the game, right?
Absolutely. He is the master of like diminishing his threat by just basically being himself. And like people even are like, yes, he's a threat, but I like him and I trust him. So he's definitely playing really well with just, you don't really see it too often with people really trying to play into talking with the host. And I think it's really cool that he is kind of diving into that strategy that we don't really see.
He's like a likable Jonathan Penner, right? Because Jonathan Penner used to antagonize Jeff, or Johnny Fairplay used to antagonize Jeff. But, in Luke's case, he and Jonathan, it looks like they would be mates outside of the game and have a couple of beers together. And it really looks like Jonathan can't hide the fact that he loves Luke as well. And that's just how powerful he is in the game. He's making everybody love him, the producers, the host, and everybody in the show. And hopefully in the future, he'll make international audiences love him if we ever do get an international season, because I feel like that's the one season he would love to come back and play, because he's been a fan of the show since forever, so he's a massive fan as well. Now, we do get a lot of questions being asked to different people within this tribal council. Jonathan trying to get some information out of them and asking, is it a straightforward vote? Are we going down tribal lines? and they're all saying, yep, we're going to go drown tribal lions. Daisy, they're pretty much making it clear in the episode or in the tribal that Daisy is our target. And they also tipped Daisy before the tribal council that they were going to bring heat her way, and she just needs to be aware of it because they're going to try and make David that comfortable so that he doesn't end up playing an idol. And it seems to work because, at the end of the day, David does not pull the idol out of his pocket, and he does get voted out with an idol in his pocket. Luke actually whispers to him at the end there, did you bring the idol with you? So clearly Luke already knew that he had an idol, but I think that why Luke asked that question is because if David was daft enough not to bring the idol with him, Luke probably knew where it was hidden on the beach, and he probably would have had dibs to that idol. I think that's why he asked that question.
Yeah. I don't know why David wouldn't bring it. I mean, wouldn't be the first time that's happened, but
JT.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Garrett too. That would be. I don't really know how that would work. Like, would that idol just become like, oh, it's anyone's game, like anyone can just take it, or would it like be void if like
what? It's one of the questions. It's one of the questions that. Sorry for interrupting your train of thought there.
No worries.
It's one of the questions that I will be asking Luke when we talk to him on the podcast because, I don't know what the rules are on the idol, and if I know that there has been a rule in recent seasons that if someone hides the idol somewhere, you can't steal it. So, like, they've brought that in so people can't steal idols from each other. So, it's quite a good question. Does that idol become null and void, or is it just fair play if someone can go and dig it up? I would hope that it's fair play, and if it makes for good TV, I would assume that production would want it to play out.
Yeah, if the person is voted out, then I feel like there's a chance that someone could just take it. But if the person's still in the game, can't just steal their idol from them.
Yeah,
that would be a crazy move by Luke to like while the vote is happening, be like, where'd you put the idol? Where is it? Back in camp? And then he has to explain exactly where he hid it, and then like go and find it. That would be really cool. But no, he brought it with him, and he has to find another one.
Yeah, no, sadly it didn't work out that way. Now, David's voted out here, and David's arc in this season, he's been the main person driving most of the storylines. He's been the most exciting character to watch. I think, Luke, for me, he's my favorite Australian character of all time up until this point of Survivor Australia, Australian Survivor. But David played such an explosive game like we've never seen on any Australian Survivor season, and he wasn't afraid of being out in the front and playing a balls-to-the-wall type of game that, he's probably at this point seen as the biggest villain to ever play the game, because he embraced that villain tag, and kind of like what Johnny Fairplay would have been in the early seasons of Survivor over in the US. He's probably at that same level when it comes to it. So, if we were to see a returner season, hypothetically, would you want to see David come back and what type of season? Like for me personally at this stage, I'd love to see him in a heroes versus villains season on a villains type of tribe based on the edit that we've seen on this season.
I would love to see him on a heroes versus villains season. I mean, the whole switching the fake idol with Sean, that's just peak villain gameplay right there. So I do feel like Survivor is kind of lacking in heroes recently because everyone is just trying to play cutthroat. But if they were to find enough heroes and enough villains, I think he would be great to be on a villains tribe.
Well, I think if you think about it in the terms of Australian Survivor, you've got Sean right there, who's a hero. You've got Simon, who's a kind of like a hero. The problem with the heroes, I find, is that they play predictable and boring and straightforward games a lot of the time, which just it's harder to root for someone like that sometimes. Like your Colby Donaldson was like one of my first heroes watching Survivor, funny enough, Australian Outback. And I feel like with Colby, like his archetype just doesn't do so well in the game anymore when it comes to popularity, and people just don't want to see the All-American Boy Scout playing the game as much anymore. But I'm sure there is some casuals who do. Like we're talking at it from a very super fan type of level, people who love to see strategy and that kind of stuff. I'm sure that the casual viewers still relate to it. And I actually would go as far as to say that in this season, even John, He would probably count as like a Australian hero, to come back. And I do feel like there's enough in previous seasons as well that have played in Australian Survivor that would fall into that same category. It's just the villains definitely, like we see with this next episode, you see everybody go back into the tribe. It was quite interesting to see Luke in between the whole group of players there in camp while they're all celebrating and laughing and giving each other high fives and patting each other on the back to say, what a great move, what a great blindside. And you can just see Luke is like completely out of it in the dark, and he doesn't know how to respond fully to it. But he does end up saying, well done, well played. He does, do the right thing here, not to make too big of a target of himself. But I really felt that specific section, could have been dealt with maybe a little bit better. I did see Pia and Abby go to him to say, are you okay? But it felt like a lot of in your face while Lucas in that group at nighttime there.
Yes. I think the Contenders were playing that well by kind of, well, maybe not, but kind of like just being like, yeah, that was like kind of in your face. Like, yeah, they came with us to blindside your closest ally. Maybe that would incentivize him, be like, wow, I can't trust them. Maybe I should go back to the Contenders. But ultimately that doesn't happen. But I agree that Luke does end up playing it well right when it comes back. I feel like there was not a lot of attention on him.
Yeah, now we do see that Luke ends up walking down the beach and, obviously wants a little bit of time just to relax or maybe get clear his head from what just happened. Because it would be devastating if the person you thought that's your right-hand person in the game that's going to go all the way, they just got blindsided. But Harry and Baden ends up walking down the beach with him. And with that, they have a conversation. And this is what I was going to say. Again, the villain's just so much more fun to watch. Luke being Luke and having done something very similar with Jericho in his first season where they took the cookies and had cookies on their own while not sharing it with the rest of the people in their tribe. They actually do one further here, and they say, actually, we'd love to have some rice tonight. And let's go back into camp while everyone's sleeping. Let's go grab some rice. Let's grab the pot, get some fire, and cook up our own rice, which I think is such a great scene. And again, just something that you'd only see a player like Luke doing. There's very few players that have got the guts or the balls to really sabotage their tribe like this, because they end up taking 15 handfuls of rice. How did the tribe not notice that was gone? Because that's a lot of rice.
I know that was my first thought, is like, they're obviously going to notice it, but they don't. Maybe there was some confrontation with someone that they just didn't show. But yeah, this is just great television. I love Luke. With Ross going out, which broke my heart. There's been lacking some just pure tomfoolery, and this is peak right here. I love Luke.
Yeah, and the other thing is you go, I think it's like day 36 or something at this stage. It's near the end of the game for a normal US Survivor season, and people just don't have the energy to do this kind of stuff when it gets this late in the game because they haven't been eating properly. But obviously, this gives them a massive boost because they're eating more than their fair share, which fuels them up for the next part of the game. But I guess from a strategic level, it looks innocent. It looks like, they're just having some fun. But similar to how Luke pulled Ross in earlier when they had the bananas secretly, he's now got two people that have done something naughty with him, Operation Night Rice or something like that was what they called it. And now he's got this thing against them that he can use if they were to turn against them. He's just playing at a different level compared to a lot of other players with that psychological game and, making them complicit in his naughty behavior there. I think it's a very smart way of playing it. And it's original. Like Luke is similar to like your Tony type of player in the sense, and I know I've made the comparisons before, they're definitely different players as well, but they're very similar in the sense that they think outside of the box. They don't play the game according to the normal rules that most people play within.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, with Tony, no one else is going to think of making a spy nest. With Luke, no one is going to think to steal rice as a strategic move. Like, no one is thinking like that deep into it. If they're stealing food, it's because they're hungry. It's not any more deep than that. And that's why I love Luke, as I love Tony, they are you're seeing them come up with new strategies just right in front of you. And that's hard to do after 21 years of Survivor.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Janine back at camp, she's happy. She's taken David out. She finally feels that this now frees her up to play her game, make her own strategies. She doesn't have David there to tell her and dictate her vote and what direction they should go with the votes. Pia realizes that Luke is someone that now might feel quite out. And we see here that Pia says she's probably the best person to talk to Luke because they've got the closest relationship, which is interesting because at this point in the game, we haven't seen much of Luke and Pia's relationship. We've seen Luke and Janine's relationship quite a bit, and we saw David and Abby's relationship. But Pia I never really knew where she fell in regards to who she's got the relationship with. But Pia is the person that goes and walks with Luke to go and have a talk with him. But even more importantly at this stage is that we've got Harry and Daisy and all of the contenders frantically looking for an idol because they know that they need to change the game around. They're on the outs, and Daisy finds the idol right by the well. But instead of doing something smart, like walking away from the well where people normally go to strategize or get water, she hangs around there for what feels like 5 minutes, probably a lot less than that, but it felt like quite a long time. And she gets caught by Luke and Pia, and she's thinking she can get away with it, but Luke's not. He was born at night, but not last night, so he knew what was going on.
That was hard to watch. It really was. Luke just played that so well. Just like trying to like make it seem like he's with her. And Daisy, oh my. I'm gonna be honest, I've seen this season before. I didn't even remember Daisy finding one idol, let alone two. So this was very, I did not remember this at all, but it was very hard to watch.
The first, just want to add in here, the first one doesn't count. Like when you put an idol in a box for you, like as soon as you open the box, the idol's right there. That doesn't count. That's a given. It's like
you're right. That's not really finding it.
But yeah, I agree with you. It was interesting because I didn't remember her finding the idols either. That just wasn't something that stuck out to me, and it's probably because ultimately we know that she's going to botch both idols and she's not playing it correctly, so it's not memorable for us, even if she did find the idols, right?
Yeah, no, it ended up meaning absolutely nothing. And I mean, I don't blame her for playing it on herself. I mean, that's just like the given, save yourself. It's a individual game. But yeah, it kind of sucks to know that she wasted two idols.
Yeah. Now, you touched on it a little bit here. Luke plays it well again because, like you said, he's doing it in such a way where he's talking to her like, listen, if you did find the idol, it may be a good thing because we can use it together to take out somebody really big. And he's making her feel at ease with the fact that she's got the idol, because some players that are lesser skilled would have been like, we know you've got it, and they would have been a lot more confrontational. Think Joe Mena over in Healers, Hustlers, and can't remember Heroes. That's the one.
Yeah.
Heroes. Like you said, there's hardly any heroes these days, so I've forgotten. Heroes is a whole tribe. But that was like really confrontational between Joe Mena and the Dr. Mike on the island because he thought Dr. Mike had an idol. Some people just don't have that ability, the social skills to understand. And especially for Luke's case here, if he makes an enemy out of Daisy, if Daisy plays that idol correctly, she's got to vote for one of the champions most likely, and he doesn't want to be that target. So really well played by him here. He's trying to keep the lines of communication open. And we move on to the reward challenge. Now, in the reward challenge, they're in pairs, and they use poles to balance an idol at the top of the poles. And as they continue throughout the challenge, they put more and more poles on the bottom to continue to raise the difficulty on this challenge, basically. One of the things that I noticed on this challenge, and I know you're not a big challenge guy, but I did want to touch on this, is that the rectangle that they were standing on was super limited. Like, they had that poles at a massive bend to try and keep it at the top, and they could only have one person at a time on opposite sides of the rectangle and still balance it and then get the pole. So the level of difficulty and complexity to this was just insane, because we've seen this challenge before, but I felt like this again was a variation of what the Australian Survivor, they've put their own sort of footprint or stamp on it, and they made that challenge even harder.
Yeah, I was actually shocked at how long they lasted. I was expecting them to drop out very quickly, and we see that Harry chose correctly with was it Abby and Janine, and
Yep.
brings along Simon, which I don't really know about that. I mean, I think Simon's kind of his place in the game is it's rock solid. He's with the champions, so I don't really know. He's just being nice or something. I don't know. But I would assume Harry would have more strategic thought into that, but I didn't really see
Who
the benefit.
who would you have chosen in that spot? Out of interest sake, just sort of brainstorming it, because if you look at Luke, for instance, Luke, I feel like he probably would have had some conversations with Luke already. He knows Luke is open to potentially flopping or swapping and doing something different, because Luke is always somebody that keeps his options open. He's got Janine, he's got Abby there. You don't want Pierre there because them three together, they're just too solid. They're not going to move or do anything differently. So in reality, outside of Simon, who else would he have chosen really on that side? I don't feel like there was too many options unless he wanted to get another contender in there to continue to pitch them.
That's a good point. With having Abby and Janine there, it does make it kind of tricky. Thinking about it now that you've brought it up, I would say probably Simon was the right choice. If Abby and Janine weren't there, I would say Luke, because he was just left out. He was the only person left out of the David vote. You want to try to, rewards are the perfect time to strategize. We've seen Luke himself have plans come to fruition starting at a reward.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Simon was probably the best choice since Abby and Janine are there, because having Pia would just be them off, on their own.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know either or, because like you said, he's just started building that relationship with Luke, where him and Luke had the Operation Night Rice, and they started building a bond there. So potentially pulling Luke in and making him feel more safe could have been a good thing. But you mentioned that a lot of strategizing happens at reward challenges. It's one of the reasons I miss seeing reward challenges in the US, even though I know we don't have the time. We barely have enough time to see people actually strategize. But I guess if we do get rid of the Exile Island or the Redemption Island type of twist where people can come back, and then hopefully that frees up some more time so we can see some of these rewards. Because I remember some of the classic Survivor rewards where they go out on a hot air balloon in Africa being such an iconic moment, or Ethan and Tom going to the village to go buy some food from a local village and give back to the community. I know we don't have that many iconic places we go to now because we're constantly in Fiji, so that kind of limits it as well. But definitely the strategizing that happens here. Janine says, when you're belly's full and you've been on an empty stomach for a long time, you're more open to actually discussing and talking to different people about different potential possibilities of what you can do. But I do feel like a lot of this just does come down to lip service and Janine giving the producers kind of what they want, because we know that they're pretty solid. And Janine has already said earlier in this episode that now that she's got rid of David, her strategy is to keep a champion strong, because that fits her agenda. She is the leader of a tight 3-person alliance within a 5-person group within that champions tribe. Why does she want to move at this stage?
She doesn't, because there's no reason to. She's at the top of them. They're not just like lying when they say she's the godmother. I mean, I would say godmother is maybe an over exaggeration, but she's definitely at the top. We see Pia that made the David move happen, but she's doing it behind the scenes. Janine is the one way out in front. And so, yeah, Janine has zero reason to turn on this. It's perfect. There's perfect reason to just stick with the champions.
Yeah. Now, we do see at Tribe, pre the immunity challenge, they talk about, Harry talks about the fact that, he's now the number one target, most likely with David being gone. It's between him and Daisy. Daisy says that now that she's got the idol, she wants to find a way to work with the rest of her group and to play it strategically so that the contenders can be strong and actually get rid of these 5 champions, because now they finally realize it's going to be tribal alliances strong until the end. So she needs to work with Harry, potentially, who she actually hasn't worked with until this game, until this point of the game. Now, the immunity challenge itself comes up, and it is balance between two plank positions, or balance in a plank position between two planks, I guess. But planking, I guess, in general, is not something that is a lot of fun to do, because I've done it a few times in my physical training exercise days throughout the years, and I definitely don't like it. It's definitely one I do skip quite a lot. And I do think that when you look at planking in general, it's not something that suits someone with a lot of body mass. Like if you're a bigger boy like your Luke, which we saw, he didn't last there very long. It's not easy. I feel like it's more suited to someone that's physically fit, like a younger Parvati, or someone with a female with a fit physique. Like I really think should be able to dominate this, opposed to guys. But we do end up seeing Baden, who, he is one of the less bulky and, big mass type of players when it comes to men, versus Simon. But Simon ultimately pulls it off, which is absolutely amazing to think that Simon is actually capable of winning it, because he does have a bit of muscle to him as well.
Yes, Australian Survivor does have these physical challenges that usually favor the big people. They're more like, push you around, getting, really rough. But they also have these types of ones where it does benefit a Baden more. And it is pretty surprising that Simon is able to pull it out, because he's very, strong and big, but he is pretty fit too. And I used to do planking for football practice, and so I don't know if they do it in Australian footy, but I would assume so.
Yeah.
So maybe Simon's got some experience with this.
But still, I think it was over 40 minutes, like for a plank. That's pretty insane.
That is ridiculous.
There's just no way I could get even, like, I reckon even at my peak fit performance, like I'd be happy to do 10 minutes of planking. Like I hated planking back in the day.
Yeah, I would be proud of myself to do 5 minutes.
Yeah. Now, we do see him winning. One of the other things I did want to touch on just before we move away from the immunity challenges, we got Baden talking about different Olympic hosting nations and just starting to have a lot of conversations. And it did give me a reminder of Christian Hibiki in David versus Goliath, when he went up against the player. I forgot who the player's name is in that season. He went up the blonde guy to kill you. Alec, and it kind of gave me a little bit of that flashback, but at the end of the day, Christian Hibiki / Baden is not to win this one, and Simon walks away with the win, which is pretty impressive to see. Now, pre-tribal, Daisy and the Contenders stay on the beach. All 5 of the champions walk away from the beach, so you know that it's going to be very much along tribal lines, and you can see that on the beach that Abby and Janine is pitching Daisy hard out. They want Daisy gone, and Luke looks over to Pia, and obviously at this stage they still, and this is one of the things I really love about Luke, is he keeps information until he needs to talk about it. It's a skill that a lot of other survivors can learn about. When it comes to the game of Survivor, information is powerful, and don't just blurb it out there or talk about it when it can blow back in your face too early in the game. And he only brings up at this point that, listen, Daisy's got an idol. We saw her get it. We can't vote for her. We're going to have to vote somewhere else. And they decide that Harry is most likely going to be the best other person to go for in this scenario.
Yeah. You see people, the whole thing about heroes, healers, hustlers was no one could keep a secret. And then Ben was able to keep the secret that he had an idol 3 times in a row. So being able to keep secrets is extremely important in Survivor. And this is a prime example of, bringing it up at the perfect time. Him and Pia were saving it for the perfect moment, and this was it, and they played it well.
You see, the most impressive part for me in Luke's game, and where he also showed keeping a secret until the last minute on when he had to use it, was in the tribal that Andy got voted out, where he only brought up Andy having voted against Daisy and trying to flip both David and himself in that specific one, which ultimately meant that Andy had no place to go back. He was so blindsided by that, he didn't know how to respond. And it's another example of Luke really holding on to information for a long time in the game until he needs to use it to further or better himself in the game. I love Luke, but if I had to play with him, unless he really saw me as his boy, and I don't know how you know if he sees you as his number one person, because he makes everyone feel that way. I feel like you're better off not playing with him, and that's why I was so amazed once again that he's still in the game at this point, and that they've let him get so far in this game.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that even though he was, tied to the hip, I guess, with David, that the champions are still 100% with him, even though he's a massive threat. Letting him get to the top 7 or 6 or whatever they have is pretty risky, and it's pretty incredible that he's gotten that this far even.
Yeah, now what we see here is that, ultimately Baden goes and walks away to Luke. And again, it shows the relationship that Luke has built here with Baden. I know we're giving Luke a lot of praise, but there was a lot of Luke in this episode. And we see Baden going to him and trusting him enough to let him know, listen, Daisy has told all of us that she's got the idol. The contenders are going to stay strong in this vote. Baden does give us a confessional saying that he still wants a champion to go, but he does feel like keeping Luke in the loop is good because him and Luke have never had to go against each other. They give each other information so they can help each other get further in the game. But this ultimately makes Luke aware that there is a good chance, because Baden says that she could play the idol for Harry, which is their vote. So it makes the champion scramble because he has to go back to them. They have to reset their plan on voting for John in this case, which Harry predicted might be the case. So Harry's showing, as well as a player, he's very capable and he can read players and strategy really well. He's a fan of the show, so clearly understands the logic that people might use in the scenario. But ultimately, really good play here from Luke in regards to building those bonds. I feel like really bad play from Baden, showing that he can't keep a secret in this case.
Yes. It's sad because up to this point, I was thinking like Baden is playing pretty well. He's not playing too shabby. But now, this doesn't ruin his game or anything, but not a good look. Definitely, his stock lowered a lot after this episode, seeing that. And Luke, just immediately recovers like nothing happened.
Well, the thing is, if you Baden right here, I know he wants a champion to go home, but by him telling Luke, he doesn't, unless Luke's in danger. Why tell Luke? This doesn't concern Luke. Luke would not have told Baden this information if the shoe was the other way, So why do this? Baden is just giving them a better chance of making sure that one of the contenders do go home. And Baden, he might have a lot of confidence in his relationship with Luke, but Luke's on the outs on that alliance as well. He's not in the inner circle. So he's really just putting himself in a bad spot here. I just really didn't like the move from Baden in this specific instance. Now, we do go to Tribal, and at Tribal, just prior to Tribal going in there, the plan was that they were going to make Daisy feel uncomfortable because Pia and Janine both mentioned that Daisy is a player that she looks out for herself in all cases. And if she thinks that the vote's going to go on her, she's just going to flop and she's going to play it. She's going to fold on the bluff, basically, on this one. And throughout this specific Tribal, the whole time, they keep the pressure on Daisy by the way that they answer the questions, making her uncertain of where the vote's going to fall. Daisy feels very proud of herself, so she's got the idol around her neck coming in, thinking, oh yeah, I'm just this big player right now because I've got the idol. And she says that, she was caught finding it, so she might as well have it out in the open, and she could play this for anyone, right, at this point. Now, ultimately, when you look at this, Harry says that the old champs, they like to play risk-free, and they're just going to go and vote them out one after each other. And the contenders, no, they don't like to play risk-free. They like to keep it interesting. Understand where his pitch is coming from. But again, if you're Janine, if you're Abby, if you're, who am I missing? Pia, if you're one of those three, why would you change it? I know he's saying there's someone that's 4th and 5th, but still that's 4th and 5th. If you end up being with the 4 people that are in the contenders tribe, you now become 5th and 6th. The numbers are not in your favor. You'll lose the spot by jumping at this stage in the game. So he's saying you should make the moves right now. I get where he's coming from, but not the right time to make a move, in my opinion.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Cochran. He went from, what was it, 6th to 7th or 7th to 8th, I forgot. It's kind of the same thing. There's just no reason to do it. And it's unfortunate because they don't want to just lay down and die, but there's really not much you can say that reasonably can change their mind.
Yeah, so good effort, applaud the effort, but they were never going to move there. Now, at the end of the day, they do go to vote here, and Daisy plays her idol. Firstly, let's talk about that before we talk about where the actual votes fell. And she plays it on herself. Like, I understand the fear. I understand you said earlier, like, listen, Daisy had to play it for herself. She talks this whole episode about the fact that she would rather go out swinging, right? In my opinion, you going out swinging is you playing an idol for someone else. Yes, maybe you get voted out. Yes, maybe you feel like, oh, I'm going to be that fool that was shown. No, you were shown to actually try to get your numbers, because you can't win this game unless you take out one of the players in that majority alliance. So for her playing her idol for herself, the champions, even though they made it clear throughout the vote that they were going to vote for her, they made it clear that Harry is potentially a target as well. John called it out in that tribal. He said, well, if you're talking about only two people, chances are it could be me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just couldn't see her playing it for John. They did keep it kind of, they mentioned Harry, they mentioned Daisy a lot. So it was tricky for her to try to figure out who it is. Who, for all she knows, could have been Baden too. One thing that is very confusing: what is up with Luke voting for Harry? There's one vote. I don't understand.
Yeah, I saw that as well, and I was trying to understand why that happened as well. And in my mind, I was just thinking, he must have thought, what happens if two people have got an idol? But at the end of the day, Harry's going to go regardless, because, he may, I don't know what his thinking was, to be honest, because, because if Abby had 4 votes on her and John played an idol successful for himself and Daisy played an idol successful or something like that, or even Daisy played it on the right person, that one vote on Harry is not enough to send Harry home. Like, Abby goes home in that case, unless Abby had an idol as well, which maybe he was thinking, if Abby's got an idol and John's got an idol, at least someone else has voted on someone else on that side to go home. I don't know. It was bizarre to me as well.
Yeah, but if it's like if he just puts his vote on John and then John plays an idol and then Abby plays an idol, then they just revote for Harry. So I've given Luke a lot of praise in this episode, but I mean, this isn't like a bad move, but it's just kind of like, what bizarre. Was the point? Yeah, it just doesn't really make sense.
No, I agree, and it was it stood out to me as well. I wasn't even aware that it was Luke that ended up putting his vote there. I might have just ended the episode before I should have. Yeah, it was an interesting vote. Maybe something to ask him, but I mean, ultimately, it's not detrimental to his game. Now, it does end up being that there's a revote, and John gets the brunt of the votes here, and John goes home. Is there anything John could have done differently in the game up until this point?
I really don't. Maybe try to work on Simon, but like I said earlier, Simon seemed to be rock solid. Pia, Janine, and Abby, they're rock solid too. That's 4 people rock solid right there. You got to try to swing Luke, I guess, in that case, but just wasn't happening. They don't really show John really doing much strategically, especially the past few episodes. So maybe there's something we're missing, but
yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that at the end of the day, John, I feel like it's just one of those players that he's not meant to play this game on a strategic level or do it. I feel like he's casted for a very specific reason, and it's to bring that human moment, to bring that person that's going to be the ultimate Australian bloke playing the game that people can relate to and things like that. He's there to bring viewership numbers, not necessarily to bring around that casual viewership numbers, not necessarily there to make big game moves. I would hope that if John was to play the game again, that he would have learned a little bit out of this season and what he's done up until this point, but it's not his day to be. Now, we do come to the end of our show today. It has been 2 great episodes. We will be back on Tuesday to do episodes 18 and 19. I will be joined by Riley again on Tuesday over in the US, and it will be on Wednesday over in the States. And then we will be back with another recap towards the end of the week. Do also keep an eye out if you're still part of this, you're still listening to the show at this point. The Challenge All-Stars are coming out pretty soon, and I will have some involvement in the Challenge All-Stars recaps for this season as well. So it'll be quite interesting. We will be doing a draft pick and some cast analysis tomorrow at some stage. So keep an eye out for that. Really excited about that. And as always, there's a bunch of things happening on Reality Pop. We're continuing to expand our team, continuing to look into other shows that we can recap on here as well. If you do like the content, if you do want to see more of this in the future and you still haven't subscribed up until this point, funny enough, Jake, most of the people that do watch this, I've noticed, are actually subscribed. But if you're some of that minority of people that are watching this at this stage and you haven't subscribed, please give us your subscription. I hope we earned it today by doing this recap. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of when we go live next. Jake, great to have you on board as always, and we will be seeing you, I'm sure, in the near future.
Awesome. See you guys.